The goal of this video is to understand the literal and metaphorical meanings within after apple picking, so you have a greater understanding of the poem. And we'll just start by reading the poem first.
After Apple Picking by Robert Frost. My long two-pointed ladder's sticking through a tree toward heaven still, and there is a barrel that I didn't fill beside it, and there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough. But I am done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night, the scent of apples, I am drowsing off. I cannot rub the strangeness from my sight I got from looking through a pane of glass I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough, and held against the world of hoary grass. It melted, and I let it fall and break, but I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell, and I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. Magnified apples appear and disappear, stem end and blossom end, with every fleck of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of the ladder round. I feel the ladder sway as the boughs bend, and I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hand, lift down and not let fall. For all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap as of no worth. One can see what will trouble this sleep of mine, whatever sleep it is. Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep.
Okay, so now that we've read through the poem, I'm just going to go through firstly what the poem means on a literal level. Now, this poem is actually quite confusing at first to understand, and it's probably the most confusing on the first reading out of all of Frost's poems. So it begins with a speaker recounting the end of his apple picking for a day, and he has a few more barrels that he has left to fill, but he's exhausted and he's finished his work, and you can see that here. Now he begins to fall asleep and he starts to become drowsy, and he describes the experience of being drowsy as like looking through a pane of glass, and everything that he sees is slightly out of its normal proportions, and he starts to see things and smell things and hear things in quite unusual ways, which kind of reflects what it's like to be falling asleep. And finally he kind of snaps out of that, and the glass breaks, but then he's back falling asleep again, and what happens, starts to think about what his dreaming might look like, and he sees these massive apples are appearing and disappearing in front of him. He's seeing the intricate details, the ends and the tops of the apples, and he sees the deep colors of red all through, speckled throughout, and he starts to actually feel what it's like to be back on the ladder and hear some of the apples dropping into the bin, and the sound of them dropping into the bin, which you can imagine with hundreds or even thousands of apples being poured into a bin, is this rumbling sound, almost like thunder as they pour in. And that experience, again, of reconsidering his everyday job of apple picking has left him tired, and he's had enough of it. And then he starts to finally think about what type of sleep he is going to have. And you can see this here. So he's thinking about what type of sleep he's going to have, and he compares it to the sleep of a woodchuck. Now, you may know that animals in winter, especially in cold places, hibernate, and they sleep throughout the winter, and they wake again in springtime to start their life again. And he compares this idea of having a long sleep and a short sleep, which I'll talk about later on. But basically, it emphasizes that he is exhausted from his job, and he is really desiring a long break from his work. let's talk about some metaphorical meanings within this poem, and we'll start with the first two lines, which is a reference to a Bible a Bible story in Genesis chapter 8, and it's known as Jacob's ladder. Now, the verse around this chapter goes like this. This is talking about Jacob. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So the stairway is obviously the ladder in this case, and it references heaven here. And basically, the idea is this importance of the dreams and how dreams can have powerful and profound effects on people and the way that they see the world. And the same is true for this composer. So that's the first metaphorical meaning. So the second metaphorical meaning is the word play here between winter, sleep, and night, and also dreams as well. They all have different connotations. Sleep can connote death, but it can also connote rest. And winter can connote, again, the death of all life, but it can also be the kind of pruning process that allows new life to occur. And night can obviously connote a time of uneasiness, of darkness, or that something bad is going to happen, or that something is finished for the day, so to say. And Frost, without specifying what he's trying to connote, he's actually providing us with some multiple meanings that the reader can kind of play with. The third metaphorical meaning is that the speaker, when he enters the dream state, he starts to look through the pane of glass, and it almost acts as a metaphor for seeing things in a different perspective. So he's trying to amplify this idea by using, a few different types of imagery to really provide this sensation of being drowsy and falling asleep. The fourth metaphorical meaning to think about is that the dream that the speaker has is of apple picking. So he's come from apple picking, and then he starts dreaming about apple picking again. Now, I'm assuming that you guys don't dream about school every single night, because how boring would that be? But this idea of dreaming about something that you do each day and seeing things in far greater detail than what you see in the day can really show that he's beginning to notice a lot of the features of his day that he wouldn't notice in his normal day-to-day work. And this is changing his opinion of his job, which is the fifth metaphorical meaning, is that the dream is restating his displeasure with his job. It's obvious that he doesn't like his job and he wants it to be over because he's been picking thousands upon thousands of apples and he's over the job. The sixth metaphorical meaning to consider is here, and it's another biblical allusion to the Garden of Eden and the fall of man. And if you don't know the story, Eve picks the apple off the fruit, becomes aware of the knowledge of life and death, and basically gets man expelled from the garden because of the fruit. Now here we see that even though the speaker has been careful to hold on to the fruit and to take care of it, he still has unfortunately allowed some to drop to the earth, and they've become bruised and spiked. And this can represent man's feelings, in this case, this man's feelings towards his job, that his job itself is the thing that is bruised and rotten and almost rotting away at his life. Now finally, we have this reference that I mentioned earlier to the woodchuck and long sleep. And this idea of long sleep and short sleep, or human sleep, is juxtaposed to each other. This is the discovery that the speaker is making through dreaming and enduring of his work, both in conscious and unconscious state. He begins to reassess what he values and how he feels towards his job. And this is made very clear by his desire to have a long sleep. You don't want to have a long sleep if you've got something exciting to wake up to the next day. And in this case, it's a great reveal of how the speaker finally feels about his job, even though it was made very clear before. So, those are some of the metaphorical meanings that I've covered. you'll be getting this techniques identified sheet in class as always, and we'll talk about it in more detail. But I really do encourage you, when you get these sheets, to go through them and to actually read some of the effects that I've mentioned here on the side of the poem, and obviously linking up to the colours, so that you can begin to formulate your own ideas and begin to see how the language is used to communicate more than just a literal meaning, but also some of the metaphorical meanings as well.